Welcome to the sleep paralysis tapes. Settle into the dark, pull the covers close, and let the heavy silence fill your room. Tonight, we descend into chilling tales of the unexplained. Before the screen fades to pitch black, I invite you to become part of this archive. If you have your own terrifying encounters, please contact me and I will narrate your story in a future tape. If these shadows bring you comfort, please like, subscribe, and tap the bell. Now, close your eyes. Do not look at the foot of your bed. Just listen and let us begin. She came in on a Tuesday. Maya Henderson, 27 years old, a pharmaceutical sales representative. She had 3 meetings over the next 2 days in Denver, and she'd done this 100 times before. It was a routine. Fly in, check in, review her presentation, get a decent night's sleep, fly out. There was nothing special about this trip. Nothing at all. The hotel was the Comfortable Suites Denver East. You know the type. It was a boxy, 4-story building from the 70s with a fresh coat of paint. The lobby smelled of generic cleaner and faintly of coffee. The clerk gave her a keycard for room 312. 3rd floor. The elevator hummed a little too loudly. The hallway was quiet. Room 312 was a room. You've stayed in it. A king bed, a desk, a television, a window overlooking the parking lot. The bathroom had a tub shower combo. It was clean. It was bland. It was forgettable. She unpacked her suitcase. She checked the thermostat. It was set to a comfortable 68 degrees. She noted, just vaguely, that the room felt slightly dated. The layout was a little off. The closet door opened in an awkward way. It was nothing major, just a feeling. For a moment, as she looked at that bathroom door, she had a flicker of a thought. A memory from when she was maybe 15. She'd read Stephen King's The Shining. The woman in the tub. It was a fleeting, nostalgic shudder. She dismissed it immediately. This wasn't a grand, isolated hotel. This was a chain hotel on a busy Denver avenue. The room number was 312, not 217. A lot of hotels have similar layouts. She ordered a salad, ate it at the desk while reviewing her slides. She took a shower. The water pressure was fine. She got into bed around 10. The silence of the room was standard. The faint hum of the HVAC, the occasional muffled sound of a door closing down the hall. This was all perfectly normal. This is what happens. You check in, you settle, you sleep. You leave. And I need you to understand this normality, because it's important. Maya wasn't looking for anything strange. She wasn't prone to nightmares. Her life was, at that moment, completely ordinary. She was just a woman in a room, about to fall asleep. That's how these things start. Not with a crack in the wall or a whisper in the dark. They start with a standard check-in. With a room that feels almost familiar, in a way you can't quite place. Then you dismiss the feeling because it's silly. You dismiss it because you're tired and you have work tomorrow. And the room is just a room. But sometimes, a room is not just a room. Sometimes the blueprint is older than the paint. Sometimes the layout remembers something the management has forgotten. Maya turned off the light. The room went dark. She closed her eyes. And in the perfectly ordinary silence of room 312, nothing happened yet. But it was waiting. And it was very, very cold. She slept, for a few hours anyway, and then, at 2:45 in the morning, Maya woke up. But she didn't just wake up. Her eyes opened, her mind was screaming, and her body was gone. This is where it gets bad. This is where you need to understand sleep paralysis. It's not like waking from a dream. It's like being buried alive in your own skin. You're conscious. You're aware of the room, the dark, the silence. But you cannot move. You cannot speak. There is a weight on your chest, a pressure so dense it feels like stone. Your lungs fight for air. Your voice is a phantom in your throat. Maya lay there in the dark of room 3-1, pinned. Her heart hammered against that invisible weight. She tried to scream. Nothing came out. Just a silent, desperate gasp. And then she felt it. On her left ankle, a grip. A hand. It was cold. Not the cold of ice or winter air. It was the cold of something that has never been warm, a deep, penetrating chill that seemed to leach right into her bone. The fingers were long. They wrapped around her ankle just above the joint. The pressure was firm and deliberate. It wasn't a spasm. It wasn't a twitch. It was a hold. In that frozen, paralyzed state, her senses began to warp. She heard breathing, not her own ragged, shallow attempts. A different sound. Heavy and wet. Like someone with water in their lungs, struggling to draw air. It came from the direction of the bathroom, from the dark space beyond that half-open door. And she smelled it. A damp, musty odor, like old carpet soaked with something foul. Like mildew blooming in a closed, dark place. The cold hand on her ankle tightened. Maya's mind was a riot of terror. She fought against the paralysis, against the stone on her chest. She tried to kick, to twist her leg free. Nothing moved. She was a statue, feeling that icy, deliberate grip. This lasted for how long? In that state, time doesn't work. It could have been seconds. It could have been minutes. It felt like an eternity. Lying there in the dark, feeling that cold, hearing that wet struggle for breath, smelling that decay. And then it stopped. The pressure on her chest vanished. The cold hand released its grip. The wet breathing ceased. The smell dissipated. She could move. She jerked her leg, pulling it up onto the bed. She sat up, gasping, her hands flying to her ankle. The skin was normal. No mark. No bruise. Just her own, warm skin. She looked around the room. It was silent. The bathroom door was still half open, the tub a dark shape inside. Nothing moved. Her rational mind, battered and frightened, began its work. It was a dream. A nightmare. Sleep paralysis. She'd heard about it. Stress, travel, a new environment. The body does strange things. The mind conjures horrors when it's half asleep. She got up. She checked the bathroom. Empty. The tub was dry. She checked the closet. Empty. She turned on all the lights. The room was just a room. She sat on the edge of the bed, her left ankle still feeling peculiar. Not cold anymore, but tingling. As if the memory of the cold was lingering in the nerves. She decided firmly that it was a one-time thing. A bizarre episode. She'd been tired. The room was unfamiliar. It was nothing. She turned off the lights again, slower this time. She lay back down. She stared at the ceiling for a long while. Eventually, she slept. And when she woke for her meeting the next morning, the memory was already fading. It had the quality of a bad dream, sharp in the moment but softening in the daylight. She dressed. She reviewed her presentation. She went to her meetings. It was a one-time thing. That's what she told herself. But here's something about these episodes. They're never really one-time things. They're a taste, a sample. The entity, if there is one, doesn't show you everything on the first night. It shows you just enough to make you doubt yourself, to make you think it was a dream. So you stay. You give it another night. And another. Because a reasonable person would. You don't pack up and leave because of a bad dream. You rationalize. You blame stress. Maya Henderson was a reasonable person. And so, that evening, after her meetings, she returned to room 312. She unpacked again. She ordered dinner again. She got ready for bed again. She turned off the light. The room went dark, and it waited. She went back. Of course she did. It was a bad dream. That's all. A vivid, terrifying dream brought on by travel stress and an unfamiliar bed. Her rational mind had filed it away by lunchtime. But the second night was worse. It started at the same time, 2:45 in the morning, the same crushing weight on her chest, the same silent scream in her throat, and the cold hand returned. But it wasn't on her ankle this time. It was higher, on her calf, the same impossible bone-deep chill, the same long, deliberate fingers wrapping around her leg just below the knee. The pressure was tighter, more possessive. The wet breathing was louder, closer. As if it was right at the foot of the bed now, leaning over her. And this time, she felt a weight on the mattress. As if someone had sat down on the edge of the bed near her feet. The mattress dipped. She felt it through the paralysis. The episode lasted longer. She was trapped in that frozen state, feeling that icy grip on her calf, feeling the dip of the mattress for what felt like 10 minutes. An eternity. When it released, she shot up in bed, gasping. She turned on the lamp. The edge of the mattress was undisturbed. The comforter was smooth. But her calf tingled, a deep residual cold. Now, a reasonable person would have stopped here. They would have called the front desk, demanded a new room, maybe even left the hotel entirely. But Maya was still a reasonable person, and reasonable people don't flee hotels because of nightmares. They power through. They have work to do. So she stayed. The third night. 2:45. The paralysis. The weight. The wet, struggling breaths. The hand moved higher. It was on her thigh. High on her thigh. The cold was so intense it felt like a brand. The fingers pressed into her muscle, not hurting, but claiming. The dip in the mattress was heavier, closer to her hip. And a new sound, a very soft, sticky sound, like wet skin peeling away from a surface. It came from the direction of the bathroom. She was crying, she realized. Silent tears were streaming from the corners of her eyes, hot against her frozen face. This was no dream. This was a pattern, a ritual. And she was the subject. When it ended that third night, she didn't sleep again. She sat in the chair by the desk, wrapped in the blanket, with every light on, until the sun came up. She should have left. She knew she should have left. But something stubborn, something prideful held her there. She would finish her trip. She would not let a nightmare dictate her life. That was her mistake. The fourth night. This is where it gets bad. You need to understand. It was learning her. Learning how far it could go. 2:45. The paralysis slammed into her like a truck. The weight on her chest was suffocating. The wet breathing was right beside her head. The smell of mildew and decay filled her nostrils, thick and cloying. And the cold touch didn't start on her leg. A hand, large and impossibly cold, settled directly onto her throat. The fingers wrapped around her neck. The palm pressed against her windpipe. There was no squeezing. Not yet. It was just holding. A promise. The wet breathing was in her ear now. A low, bubbling inhale and exhale, right against her skin. She could feel a faint, damp spray with each breath. And then, pressure. The hand tightened. Just a fraction. Enough to restrict her air, enough to make her paralyzed diaphragm hitch in a silent panic. It held her like that for a long, long time. As if savoring her terror, as if letting her understand completely that she was not having a dream, that she was being touched. When I finally let go, The release was so sudden she thought she'd imagined it. The room was silent. The smell was gone. She could move. She scrambled out of bed, stumbling to the bathroom, flipping the light on. She stood before the mirror, hyperventilating, her hands going to her throat. No bruises, no red marks. But her skin was damp, cold and damp to the touch, as if a cold, wet hand had indeed been there. She looked down at her leg, where the touch had been the night before. On her left thigh, in the soft light of the bathroom, she saw them. Faint, grayish marks. The outline of long fingers and a palm, like the imprint left by a damp hand on a glass. They were clear, unmistakable. She stared, her breath catching. She touched them. The skin was chilled. The marks were slightly raised, and as she watched over the next few minutes, they faded. The chill receded. The gray tone lightened until there was nothing, just her own unmopped skin. She stood there, in the bright, silent bathroom, staring at the place where the marks had been. All her rationality evaporated. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't sleep paralysis. It was something else. Something that left a signature. Something that was in the room with her. And it was getting closer. She stood at the front desk at 4 in the morning. She wasn't crying. She wasn't screaming. She was just cold and still. Her hands were flat on the counter. Her voice was a monotone. "I need a different room." The night clerk, Javier, looked at her. He saw the look people get when they've stopped being afraid and started being certain. It's a hollow look. The eyes are wide but empty. He'd seen it before. Usually with people who'd found a bug in their bed or heard a party next door all night. But this was different. She wasn't angry. She was resigned. "Of course, ma'am," he said. "Any problems with room 312? She didn't answer directly. She just said, "I can't sleep there." He processed the change. Room 514. A higher floor. A different wing. As he made the new key card, he tried the usual script. Sometimes the air conditioning units on that floor can be a little noisy. If it's a noise issue, we can. "It's not noise," she said. Her eyes focused on him. "It's the room. The layout. Something's wrong with it." Javier paused. He was a good clerk. He was also a man who'd worked at this particular hotel for 12 years through the renovation. He knew things the managers didn't. He knew the whispers. He leaned forward a little, his voice dropping. "The layout?" She nodded. "It feels familiar, in a bad way." Javier looked at her for a long moment. Then he sighed, a small, tired sigh. "They used the old blueprints," he said. Maya blinked. "What?" "The 2018 renovation. They wanted to preserve the classic footprint to save money on redrawing the plans. They just used the original blueprints from 1971. They updated the finishes and the furniture. But the walls, the dimensions, the placement of the doors and the bathrooms, they're exactly the same as they were 50 years ago." He said this like it was a simple fact. But his eyes were careful. Maya felt a chill that wasn't from the room. "Why would that matter?" Javier looked down at his keyboard, then back up at her. He seemed to be deciding whether to say more. He decided. "You said it felt familiar. Did it remind you of anything? A movie, maybe?" The question hung in the quiet lobby. Maya's mind flashed back to her first fleeting thought. "The woman in the tub." Room 217. She didn't speak. Her silence was answer enough. Javier nodded, very slowly. The architectural firm that designed this building in the 70s also did some consulting work, uncredited, for a film. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. They provided layouts and dimensions for the Overlook Hotel, especially for the rooms. He let that sit there. Maya's breath felt shallow. Room 217. Javier didn't confirm it directly, he just said, "Your room, 312. The third floor layout is a mirror of the second floor original." The dimensions are identical. The bathroom placement, the closet, the distance from the bed to the wall. It's the same blueprint. He handed her the new key card for 514. They just changed the number. And there it was. The eerie familiarity wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't just a similar style. It was the same map, the same bones. Her perfectly ordinary renovated room was built on the same plan as one of the most famous haunted rooms in fiction. A fiction that had roots in a real firm's real designs. A reasonable person would laugh. They'd say it was a fun trivia fact, a strange connection. But Maya wasn't feeling reasonable. She was feeling the cold grip on her throat. She was seeing the fading gray marks on her skin. She took the key card. Her hand was steady, but her fingers were ice cold. "Thank you," she said. She turned and walked toward the elevator. "Room 514. A higher floor, a different wing, a different number. For a moment, as the elevator doors closed, she felt a wave of relief. It was the room, the specific room. It was the blueprint. Now she was leaving it, going somewhere new. Somewhere with different walls, a different layout. The entity, if it was tied to the room, it would stay there in 312, with its original terrible blueprint. She believed that. She needed to believe that. The elevator rose. The doors opened on the 5th floor. The hallway was quiet. The lighting was the same soft yellow. She walked to room 514. She opened the door. It was a room. A king bed, a desk, a television, a bathroom. It looked different. It felt different. She let out a breath she'd been holding for days. She put her bag down. She checked the thermostat. She looked at the bathroom door. It was just a room. And for a few hours, she almost believed it was just a room. The relief in room 514 was a fragile thing. It lasted until about 2:40 in the morning. Maya was awake. She hadn't even tried to sleep. She sat in a chair by the desk, a blanket around her shoulders, watching the digital clock. She was waiting for 2:45. And at 2:44, the room got cold. This was different. The air itself thickened. It grew heavy and damp. She watched her own breath plume out in a white cloud. The thermostat's soft green LED display glowed in the dark. She watched the numbers. 68, 67, 66 was dropping fast. 65, 64. She stood up, the blanket falling away. The cold bit through her pajamas. It was a deep, aching cold that settled into her joints. She walked to the thermostat. The number read 59, and then 58. She reached out a shaking hand and pressed the up arrow. The display acknowledged the command with a faint click. The number didn't change. It just kept falling. 55, 52. She pressed it again, frantically. Nothing. 49. This was impossible. Central heating couldn't drop 30 degrees in a minute. She looked at the clock. 2:45 exactly. The number on the thermostat settled. 32. Freezing. The silence in the room was absolute. No hum from the vents. No sound from the hallway. Just the terrible waiting silence of a deep freeze. And in that silence, a new thought, colder than the air, entered her mind. It wasn't touching her. It was changing the room itself. For her, this was an escalation, a demonstration of power. She needed light. She couldn't stand in the dark with that number glowing beside her. She turned, fumbling for the lamp. Her numb fingers found the switch. She clicked it. Light flooded the corner of the room, and that's when she saw them. The footprints. They started at the bathroom door, 2 fresh, wet prints on the carpet. Bare feet, large. A man's feet. They led out of the bathroom, 1 print, then another. A slow, deliberate trail. They went right up to the foot of her bed, and they stopped. As she watched, the wetness was still soaking into the fibers. The prints looked recent, minutes old. Seconds, maybe. Her eyes tracked back to the bathroom. The door was open. The light was off inside. It had come out of the bathroom. While she was sitting there in the dark, awake, it had walked, barefoot and wet, across the room, and it had stood at the foot of the bed, watching the chair where she sat. It hadn't needed her to be asleep. The blueprint didn't matter. The room number didn't matter. It wasn't tied to room 312. It was tied to her. And it had followed her. A sound escaped her throat. A choked, dry gasp. She looked from the footprints to the thermostat reading 32 to the empty space at the foot of the bed. There was no safe place. Not in room 514. Not in this hotel built on old, borrowed bones. The entity had made its point. It wasn't a ghost in a room. It was a presence with a purpose. And it was learning. Adapting. First a touch in the night, now a change in the very air. A physical sign of its passage. It was telling her it could be anywhere. It was telling her it was always there. She didn't pack. She didn't call the desk. She just grabbed her purse, her phone, her coat. She stepped over the wet footprints, her own socks soaking up the chilling damp. She fled the room. She left the light on. She left the thermostat glowing its impossible frozen number. She took the stairs, not the elevator. Her breath was still white in the air of the stairwell. She hit the lobby doors at a near run. Javier was still there. He took one look at her face, at her wide, vacant eyes, and he didn't ask a single question. He just began the early checkout process, and as he worked, he said one more thing, his voice low. Room 514. That thermostat, it's done that before. The log shows it. 2:45 a.m. Drops to 32 for exactly 5 minutes. Then it resets. Maintenance says it's a glitch they can't fix. He handed her the receipt. His expression was one of profound, weary apology. A glitch, Maya repeated, her voice hollow. That's what they call it, Javier said. She turned and walked out into the Denver night. The cold outside was natural. It didn't feel the same. Nothing would ever feel the same again. She didn't go home. Not right away. She drove a rental car to a 24-hour diner off Interstate 70. She sat in a booth under the fluorescent lights, holding a cup of coffee she didn't drink. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The warmth of the diner felt like a lie. When the corporate office opened at 8, she called. Not the hotel. She called her own company's travel department. Her voice was flat and precise. She filed an incident report, a hazard report. She used words like unsafe environment and mechanical failure causing hypothermic conditions. She did not mention hands. She did not mention footprints. She mentioned the thermostat, the documented glitch, the physical distress. She was a professional, reporting a facilities problem. They listened. They took notes. They promised to follow up with the hotel chain. They offered to book her a different hotel for the rest of her trip. She declined. A week later, she received an email. The hotel management had been contacted. They expressed regret for her discomfort. They confirmed a known issue with a thermostat in that wing. They said it had been fully serviced. They offered her a $50 credit for a future stay. The report was closed. That was the official end of it. But for Maya, that's where it began. She flew home. She went back to her apartment. She slept with the lights on for a month. Her travel rituals changed permanently. Now, she packs a sleep mask. Not to block out light, but to have something over her eyes the moment she turns the lamp off. She has a small, expensive white noise machine. It doesn't just make sound. It makes a wall of sound, a barrier. She sets it between the bed and the bathroom door, and she always brings a nightlight. A small, plug-in LED. She puts it in the bathroom outlet. It casts a faint blue glow across the threshold, so she can see the doorway from the bed. So she can see if anything steps out of it. She still travels for work. She has to. But she books different chains. She requests top-floor rooms away from the elevators. She checks the thermostat first thing. She checks the space under the bed and the back of the closet. She does it with the cool, detached efficiency of a soldier checking for tripwires. And every time, at 2:45 in the morning, she wakes up. Whether she's in Phoenix or Atlanta or Chicago, her eyes snap open. She lies perfectly still, listening to the white noise, watching the blue light from the bathroom. Her heart is a frantic drum against her ribs. She waits for the air to thicken. She waits for the cold. It hasn't come back. Not like that! But the fear has. It's woven into her now, a lingering chill in her blood. The mystery of the blueprints was never solved. Why would a budget hotel chain in Denver use the original plans from 1971? To save money, sure. That's the reason on paper. But why did those original plans match, dimension for dimension, the layout of a fictional haunted room? The clerk said it was uncredited consulting work, a firm lending its designs to a film, a strange little piece of trivia. But I've looked into it. That architectural firm, it went bankrupt in 1985. Its records are scattered and lost. No one can confirm what they did or didn't design for Kubrick. The hotel's current management doesn't know. They don't want to know. So we're left with the coincidence. A room that feels familiar. A blueprint that should have been redrawn, but wasn't. And the phenomenon itself. That's the part that stays with me. It wasn't a recording. It wasn't a ghost replaying the same moment. It learned. It adapted. First, it worked through sleep paralysis. When she moved rooms, it changed its method. It manipulated the environment. It left physical evidence, the footprints. It showed her it could be anywhere. It showed her he was aware of her. That's not a residual haunt. That's not a glitch in the building. That's intelligence. Maya's report is filed away in a corporate server. A curiosity. A customer complaint about a faulty thermostat. But she knows. And I know. Sometimes a story is just a story. Sometimes a blueprint is just a drawing. And sometimes something uses the map to find you. Maya still feels the cold. Not on her skin. Inside. A core, deep chill that never really went away. It's there when she turns off the lights. It's there in the silence between the beats of the white noise machine. It's there in the blue glow of the nightlight, painting the empty bathroom doorway. She lives with it. She travels with it. Because once you know that a room is not just a room, once you know that the dark can hold a shape that learns and follows, you never really check out. The tape has reached its end. I hope the stories tonight brought a pleasant chill to your spine as you drifted further into the dark. Thank you for braving the shadows here at the Sleep Paralysis tapes. If you are still awake, lying still in the quiet, remember to contact me with your own unsettling encounters so they can be added to our growing archive. As my voice fades away, let the silence of your room wrap around you completely. May your sleep be undisturbed, your doors remain locked, and your morning arrive safely. Until we open the tapes again, good night.